Call the Committee of the Whole meeting order for Tuesday, June 4th, 2019. First item is roll call.
Miller?
Here.
Rosado?
Here.
Beck? Here. Knopf?
Here.
Chancet?
Here.
Silvati?
Here.
Wolf?
Here.
O'Brien?
Here.
Callahan?
Here.
Meitzler?
Here.
Malay? Ewer?
Here.
Cerrone?
Here.
And McFadden?
Here. Okay. Next up is the reminder to please speak into the microphone for the VTV recording and telecast. So if anybody uses the mic tonight, make sure you're right up next to it. Number 3 would be items to be removed, added, or changed. Do we have anything? Change, add, or remove tonight?
Not a lot to it. Not a lot to it.
Next up would be matters from the public. Anybody from the public? Seeing nothing, we'll move right on into number 5. Presentation on point-to-point Kane County from Lindsay Hartman. Welcome.
Really fast, I thought I Number 5 here. Okay, so I have to speak into this. I was listening. Yeah, so thank you guys for having me. My name is Lindsay Hartman. I am the founder and director of Point to Point Kane County. Point to Point is a harm reduction program, which means we accept that people are going to use drugs, and we aim to reduce the harms associated with those drugs. So part of the, I'm a really loud talker. Is that crazy? Okay, sorry. So the services we offer are safer injection supplies, anything you would need in order to inject in a sterile and safe manner. We do syringe access and syringe disposal. We also have other harm reduction supplies like safer snorting kits and condoms, and we provide the overdose reversal drug, Narcan, to the public and do training for that as well, which reverses an opioid overdose and is part of the Good Samaritan law that anyone can carry or administer. And we also provide fentanyl testing strips, which I'm sure everyone has been hearing about fentanyl. It's kind of a buzzword right now. Fentanyl is showing up in the supply of a lot of drugs, and that's why people are accidentally overdosing. So fentanyl test strips are actually designed specifically so that someone can test their supply to see if there's fentanyl in it. That doesn't mean they're not going to then not use that drug. It just means they know what they're using and they can kind of proceed with caution. So Point to Point right now is just me and one other woman. We are completely, it's all volunteer. Neither of us are paid. This program is my passion project. It was completely built out of, from the ground up by me and just the people around me who support me. And so right now we have 2 pop-up locations on the weekends. Saturdays, we are at the Kane County Coroner's Office, and basically I wanted to provide these pop-up locations for people that they would know where we were gonna be and when, and so they could come meet us if possible. And the coroner actually is the perfect spot for us to meet because he takes used syringes and I can dispose of them right there. So, and Rob Russell is a huge advocate for harm reduction, so he's been a great support. And then our second location on Sunday is at Open Door Health Center in Aurora. And again, it's a mobile unit, so we work out of the car. So this vehicle is actually just the only vehicle I have, so I drive it all the time. You guys might have seen it around. It says Point to Point on it. It's hard to miss. There's needles on the side of my vehicle. And basically, we just go. And so Sunday mornings, we are at Open Door Health Center in their parking lot, and I sit and I wait for people who might need services. And then we also offer deliveries. So the reason that this is really relevant right now to our community is there's a couple things happening right now. Number one, in Illinois, we are about to pass legislation that actually says that needle exchange is legal, period, end of report. Right now it's a little bit of a gray area. It's ambiguous, as some people have said. The local, the Kane County state's attorney, sheriff, coroner, like I said, all know about my operation, but we are functioning under this like research this research caveat that says that I keep data and it goes back to research on harm reduction programs, and So this legislation that's about to pass is going to say that it's legal, period. So that's happening right now. We were actually just featured in the Tribune yesterday to kind of talk about our program and needle exchange and the benefits of that. And the other thing that I want to mention is that our community is really hurting right now. We are not immune to this epidemic. Just in the past week, we've lost 6 people to opioid overdoses. So things like fentanyl test strips and access to Narcan are really, really essential right now because that's how lives are saved. People need to know what they're using so they don't accidentally overdose, and people need to be carrying Narcan so they can reverse this overdose. The Surgeon General has even come out and spoke about how people should be trained with Narcan the same as they are with CPR. It is just something that is really, really prevalent and really preventable, and it breaks my heart every time we lose someone because they're preventable deaths. So I wanted to just kind of let you guys know what I was doing and what harm reduction was, and then really more than anything, if there were any questions, because I am trying to be really mindful of your time, and if I get going, I could talk forever because this is my passion. I'm so loud, I'm so sorry. So I just wanted to let you guys know, kind of, especially because I'm a Batavia resident and I live right down the street, and so my vehicle is out and about all the time. If there were any questions, concerns, harm reduction is a proven way to prevent death and to save lives, and is still very controversial, unfortunately. And that's why I really just appreciate any opportunity to get in front of people and answer questions, because it's really, really important to me. And there are people in my life who have been saved because of these measures, and people in this community that have been saved specifically by Point to Point and the Narcan that we provide people. So I just wanted to kind of give myself to you guys if you had any questions or concerns. I'm here. Yeah.
How are you funded?
Okay. Your name's right, but those names are switched, so that's confusing me. So was everyone else's names right? Okay, Scott.
My name's right.
Okay.
They're just confused.
How are we funded?
Yes.
Right now we're not. I was just recently approved for 501c3. Everything that I have right now has been donations. All of our supplies were donations from either Chicago Recovery Alliance or NASN, which is North American Syringe Exchange Network. The fentanyl test strips are very expensive. You can't get them donated for anything, so I bought those with some donations, and the vehicle was purchased from partially a GoFundMe and partially me. I just graduated college today, so that's on my radar now that I'm gonna be able to take a breath to start applying for some grants. So that's, we're eligible now that I have my 501c3. We just haven't had the time or the resources to apply for grants. So your name is not Marty, so.
Just having some fun. I'm curious, could you talk about stigma? How are you dealing with overcoming stigma? The reason I ask that is I can't imagine that you've been doing this for that long. 10 years ago, you probably couldn't have done something like this. Our society was not ready to hear about treating this problem in this way. So how do you deal with that? Yeah, well,
10 years ago, like, they were happening. Like, I have some really incredible harm reduction advocates who were doing needle exchange for the very long. Chicago Recovery Alliance has been doing it since early 90s. But stigma, oh my gosh. So people don't like me or what I do because people think that drug users deserve to die. And I don't mean to say that in a harsh way, but that's it. I've had people tell me straight up that it's a waste what I do to let them die, that it's cheaper to let them die, which is not factual. The coroner and I had this conversation because, I mean, if that's who you are as a human, that makes me sad, but I also know the numbers. So if that's your angle, it's not true to let them die. I believe so strongly in this work, and that people who use drugs deserve to live and deserve to have a good life and to see recovery and to survive. And these are people that I love, and these are people that I care about. So yeah, stigma is real, and people don't want to hear about it, and people think that I'm enabling drug users. And if anyone is thinking that, please say it because I love talking about how I'm not enabling drug users. But so I think for me, I just try to stay focused, and I focus on the people that I serve, and that's it. Like, the people that I serve are living, and a few of my regulars right now are actually in treatment and doing really, really well. And so I think that, like, stigma with anything is, if you're a social justice activist, as I've always been, it is what it is, you know?
Would you say that your clients fall anywhere in the socioeconomic spectrum? Is it more on one end or more on another, or a little bit of everything?
Most of my clients are white, and they're right around my age, and they have homes or live with their parents or maybe temporarily home, like have jobs, things like that. So I think that that's the other thing, is that people think that like that homeless guy down the street is like a heroin user, and that's just not the way that it works anymore. Pain pills are opioids. People can overdose from taking too many Vicodin, the same as they would shooting up too much heroin. So that's an important distinguished, like, whatever thing, that word I can't find, but you know what I mean?
Part of the reason I was asking is if you are servicing any population that is impoverished or unable to make their bills, the Community Reinvestment Act through banks might be something sweet for you. Banks make substantial investments in their communities. Start knocking on doors, because you'll get $1,000, $10,000 checks from all the big banks in Illinois if you are serving under.
Let's talk about that. Let's have a sit down. What's your real name?
Yeah.
Dan?
We all have students.
Jeez Louise, tricking me over here, tempting me with money and a fake name. I see what this is. I see what's happening here. This is a setup.
Welcome.
You mentioned that some of them, the clients that you served are in treatment.
Yeah.
Is there contacts that you have or information you try to get to these people?
Yeah.
You know, on a constant basis to try to help them out of that?
Yeah. So
that problem?
Yeah. So my mission with Point to Point is I never mention treatment. That's just not. I mean, anyone, especially like in Kane County right now, who's trying to combat the opioid crisis is like treatment, and that's great, but recovery is not linear, and that's just not how it works. And pushing people into anything never works. And I've seen it, because I was the girl who drove her ex-boyfriend to Gateway at 8 a.m. and like dropped him on the doorstep like a puppy and said, take him. So I've lived that life, and I know that that doesn't work. So, but I'm there, and I have the resources, and they know that. I had one guy who literally, I was getting ready to leave for the Saturday exchange, and he called me and he said, I'm ready, like right now, and I need to go to the ER because I'm in full-blown withdrawal, and I'm not going with anyone except for you. And I went, okay, no exchange today. We're going down. We went down to Lutheran General because he didn't have insurance, and I sat with him in the ER all afternoon. And he has 60 days now. So maybe more than that. It's been a little bit since I talked to him. So yeah, I have resources, because I'm not good at that stuff. That's also not my gig, is like placing people into treatment. That's super tricky. And even places like Gateway have like this many beds for people that don't have insurance, or this many beds that have people that have Medicaid, and there's a waiting list usually. And so if it's an emergency situation, I have contacts that I call and I say, hi, this guy needs treatment like today, what can you do? Because that's I know that that's not my thing. So I do what I can, and I will sit with you the best that I can, and I will put you in contact with people, but it's also just like the treatment game right now is so difficult to get people in. And sometimes it's just like, okay, it's Friday night, you can maybe start calling on Monday, let's make sure you don't die over the weekend. And that's real. So.
Elliot? So just, if I can, kind of taking that as another step, I mean, just do some reading on this stuff, and I think it's pretty obvious from my standpoint, but I understand that some people just don't agree. You know, a big part of this too is this is the opportunity to bridge to some people who would otherwise just be in the shadows and not get any sort of direction or know that anyone even cares. And it's also a way to stop some of the spreading of disease just because of the reuse of syringes as well. I mean, is there anything you can speak to on that front? I mean,
all day. So harm reduction and syringe access is incredible for stopping the spread of HIV and Hep C. Period, end of report. Also, if you reuse the same syringe, you're gonna hurt your body, and it's terrible. And trying to get drug users to use clean supplies every single time they shoot up is like, takes a lot of work. But so that in and of itself, public health wise, is gigantic. Because it saves people money from ER visits for abscesses, for infections, Hep C, HIV treatment. I mean, all of that stuff, it's so incredibly preventative, and that's where all the science lies. But there is this other point, and that I'm glad you mentioned, that like, I get to be that door that says like, hey, I love you. I don't care that you're injecting heroin. In fact, can I tell you how to do it a little bit better? Because you're killing yourself when you don't really need to be. Like, let's talk about sterile water. Why are you using tap water that's going directly into your bloodstream? If you're gonna shoot a line or snort a line, can I give you something sterile to take it off of so you're not using a toilet? Like, and what you're teaching people is self-compassion. You're teaching people, number one, that I care about you, like me, Lindsay, that I care about you, and I'm gonna be making sure you're safe and making sure you're alive. I mean, I get very annoying when I don't hear from people because it's terrifying. And I'm like, hi, hello, hi, it's me, hi, where are you? So I'm showing them that I care about them, and I'm teaching them to care about themselves. Like, their family is suffering, their loved ones are suffering. I'm removed enough that I can be like, I got you, babe. Like, we're good, because you're not taking advantage of me. You're not stealing my money. Everything I'm giving you for free. You don't have to hide your drug use from me. Like, can you imagine, like, being a drug user? You lie to everyone in your life, including the people you love more than anything. And if I get to walk in and say, you don't have to lie to me, that changes a person. That changes their psyche. And that's what harm reduction is. The science backs that, yes, it stops the spread of disease and hospital visits and all of this stuff and overdose, but it also like is compassion above all. And that's why like it means the world to me, because it's compassion. Like, who wouldn't want to just offer that to people, especially people who never see it? So, thank you.
Marty?
So we've spent a lot of time talking about this.
Oh yeah, I know you.
Yeah. And you know, the former cop in me knows there are different ways that have to accomplish the goal, which
Right.
is to save lives.
Right.
End of story. There's a reason that the coroner supports you so much for it, because he sees the end product of it.
Right.
And he doesn't want to see that end product.
Right.
Would we tell somebody with diabetes injecting insulin, just get better? Or reuse the syringe over and over? Because if diabetes affected the mental health, cognitive part of it, like drugs do, we'd be seeing telethons on TV for it. What you've been saying absolutely has been, since our very first meeting, the smallest little thing that you can show them as an individual to start caring about themselves, that's when they will decide the path for their recovery.
Yes, and it's stressful to me that while our community is really working hard to combat, and you know, there's the Kane County Opioid Task Force and blah, 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 but we have a population that's actively using that we're completely disregarding. And that hurts me because I know them and I know that they're hurting. And I really excuse me, can't stress enough how much we need to look for a solution, but not disregard the people that are already hurting, because that's it. Showing them compassion. I had a participant and I called him my poster child, and unfortunately I lost him to an overdose in April, and it was heartbreaking. But I found out after he passed, his girlfriend told me that I was saved in his phone as my secret angel. And his girlfriend was like, first I was pissed because I was like, what's going on? But he told me it was you, because I was the one where he's on the streets, he's calling me. He needs anything, he's calling me. His friend is nodding out and he thinks he might overdose. I'm on the phone with him, asking him to check how he's doing and do you need anything and can I bring you Narcan? What's going on? So people who use drugs are on the front lines of the opioid crisis. and they need to be the ones that are a part of the conversation. And so I just can't stress that enough, that I appreciate this community for wanting to remedy the situation, but I also think like we are completely ignoring people who are suffering. And I just am really trying to run around with my arms waving just to say, hey, remember, there are people that are actively using, and there are still people, and we love them, and let's try to see them do well too. So
I think that kind of the point of you here is your chair is at the table with us, because these are issues that we've been talking about: opioid crisis, the suicide rates, the mental health issues. All of it is not one thing alone. It's all interconnected. It is all those pieces which do make up a community, good, bad, or ugly.
Exactly.
And you have to deal with all of them. And if you don't treat the most hurting in the community, it festers. And then that becomes the true cancer.
absolutely.
So anything
Absolutely.
that you want us to do, you can reach out to anybody here, because
Thank you.
everybody's going to have an ear.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I really appreciate being here. I would just say, we need people in the community to hear from people like, I don't want to say empower, because I, to be honest with you, don't really know what you guys do, but I feel like you have some authority. But people need to, like, to say that they support this, because that's the thing that kills me the most is that I'm getting the attention that I need from, like, the Daily Herald and the Tribune, and I'm here now, but, like, I still will go. Last weekend, I went 2 days without seeing anyone. And that means the people that need me are not hearing about it or are too scared to come see me. And that's not okay with me. So while I appreciate being in this room, I would rather be boots on the ground, like, with the people who need me. And so awareness spreading is not a joke. Like, in a lot of ways, I roll my eyes, but, like, for this, people in Batavia need to know that we have syringe access, that we have harm reduction services, and that they're supported. So, yeah.
You kind of answered my question. I just wanted to say thank you for
Yeah.
what you do, and to ask what we could be doing and what we could be doing more of as people sitting here, but then also somebody watching from home that wants to get involved or wants to support you. What are the ways that people can get involved and help?
Yeah, so right now I am directing everyone to just like my social media and to follow on the volunteer group. It's Point to Point Kane on Facebook, or maybe Kane County, which professional businesswoman doesn't know her social media handle. And to join the volunteer group, because the biggest thing that, like, just, I need help with, like, silly stuff, like spreading awareness and getting flyers out and stuff that I just don't physically have the time to do because it's just me. Or I put together a lot of, like, kits, like safer snorting kits, or I have little cotton balls that are for filters that you pull your heroin through, and, like, those need to go into, like, little plastic baggies that I just do not have. Maybe I will now because I'm done with school, but, like, I haven't had the time to do. And so stuff like that. I've been pushing our Amazon wish list, because while right now I'm overloaded with supplies, I know that at some point this is going to take off and people are going to start using my services more than they are, and I'm going to need to re-up, and I don't have money to do that right now. So if anyone knows anything about grant writing, I'm desperate for help with grant writing. I mean, I have nothing. And so I am, like, the queen of asking for free stuff and for help. Like, if anyone knows, like, someone who can help me print flyers for cheaper, I need help with that. Like, I'm literally just me, like, no money. So any possible thing that you could find helpful, I will take advantage of you. So, and that's the truth. So.
I think that might be a good opportunity to, like, in front of either the Main Street Board or the Chamber Board to see what businesses might be willing to help you with printing or, you know, whatever you might need.
Yeah, I would love that.
In our community, we have a lot of businesses that will back something like this, that they're going to want to look for being able to support something like that. So there are a lot of organizations in town that you could be involved with that could help you. The other question I have is, are you connected with the 211 service that's in Kane County now? So if somebody calls 211 and they want...
I know what it is. I don't know how to, like, get on that list. So I would like to get on that list.
That's another way for you to be publicized and be available to somebody who calls that number because they don't know what to do because they have somebody that OD'd at their house or there's 911.
Yeah, absolutely.
To be able to try to find those kind of supplies or to get somebody some help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Point-to-point cane, by the way.
Is that my handle?
It's the first thing, if you type point to point in Facebook, it comes up immediately.
Okay, I knew that. I was just testing y'all.
And the Main Street director is right there in the white shirt.
Oh, hi. We'll talk. Yeah, well, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. And yeah, like I really just like shamelessly, I'm going to say, like, just mention it, like just talk about it, mention it to people, throw it on your Facebook. Like, even with like the Batavia government page just recently had like a stat on opioid 911 calls, and I was like, hello, I should be included in this conversation. So things like that. I don't really know who I need to talk to either, because I am first and foremost an activist, and so I want to be, like I said, boots on the ground. So if anyone can just like reach out and be like, hi, you need to talk to this person, that is a huge help to me, and I am like not ashamed to say that I have no idea what I'm doing. I know how to be an activist. I'm not a great entrepreneur yet, but yeah, thanks guys. And yeah, feel free to reach out if you think of anything later, have any questions. Like, I'm really accessible on social media, or just the point-to-point number comes right to my phone. So that's an easy way to contact me as well. And yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming down and talking to us.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up is a discussion on alderman employment, potential conflicts of interest.
So actually, I'm going to turn that part of the discussion over briefly to Laura.
Sorry, I just wanted to provide her with information on how to contact Melinda Kintz at United Way, who, as we know, spearheaded bringing 211 services to Kane County. So I hope that Melinda will be able to help you, because I think you'll be a fantastic resource to add to that, and I think it'll give you the visibility that you're looking for. So thank you very much. This item was on the agenda, but it is really no longer a topic that there is a pressing need to discuss, because there is no pending potential conflict of interest that exists at this point. However, since the item is on the agenda, Kevin Drendel, our city attorney, is here, and we can take the time to have a brief overview of it, or if maybe anybody has any remaining questions about employment conflicts of interest, as those can come up for an alderman in their service on city council, that might be beneficial. Kevin, if you want to just do sort of a brief overview of how those types of conflicts arise and what the basic Illinois statutory and regulatory issues are, that'd be appreciated.
Yeah, I'll try to be quick, because I think that, there's a lot of material out there, but it is tricky, because there are actually two statutes, and then there's common law, and the cases, which a lot of them are all over the board, and sometimes they appear to fall on two sides of the same issue. So it is tricky, and it seems to come up every 2 to 4 years. Mm-hmm. A lot of times it comes up right after an election. Questions arise, and so it is good to talk about. One of the overarching principles is that as an elected official, there's this kind of duty of loyalty to your office. You're a public official. You are representative of the constituents. You're acting on behalf of the public. You're given a public trust, and there's another issue related to conflict of interest, and that's conflict of office. And actually, under conflict of office, for instance, if someone were on the school board, they couldn't also be on the city council, and there may be no pending relationship between the two, no contract, but there could be. And if in the area of conflict of office, even if there could possibly be a conflict, you can't hold both offices. Again, because your duty of loyalty gets divided at that point. Are you making this decision with your school board hat on, or making this decision with your city council hat on? And it's the same kind of issue with personal conflicts. And they arise in all kinds of different ways. if you own a business on property that needs zoning relief, that presents an issue because the zoning relief has to come before the council that you're a member of at some point. And it can arise in the area of employment. And one of the issues in employment is that there are cases on both sides. And the one case that kind of set the tone involved 9 council members who were all employees of a paving contractor who was trying to do business with the city. So it's kind of an extreme case. 9 of you guys?
That's impressive.
Small town.
That's really impressive.
That's a conflict. We can't have that. But then there's cases that edge away from that. For instance, and this isn't the real case, but what if you're a part-time checkout clerk at the Walmart? Well, Walmart isn't going to rise or fall, and that job isn't going to depend upon any decision the city council makes. It's probably not a statutory conflict. But then there's the whole other category of common law conflicts where you have an interest at stake that's a little bit different than the rest of the council. If you're a Walmart employee, you might be loyal to Walmart. Of course, you might not be at all. You may not like your employer, but that's a whole other story. The issue is that, thinking about, okay, I have some relationship to this matter that's coming up before the city council that's different than everyone else. I need to stop and check myself. And, if there is an appearance of a conflict or the possibility that someone might think, hey, wait a minute, then it's something that should be disclosed. And you can deal with a common law conflict by simply not participating in the discussion and in leaving the dais, leaving the meeting as a council member, maybe taking a seat in the audience, to remove yourself from any appearance that there might be an issue. And that's the proper way to deal with a common law conflict. But it is a little bit tricky, and these issues, like I said, they always seem to come up every 2 to 4 years, almost like clockwork. And if anyone has a question about any interest they might have in something that may be coming before the city council at some point, I'm there as a resource.
Exactly.
I do represent the city council as a whole. I don't necessarily represent individual council members, but to the extent that it's an issue for you, it's an issue for the city. So I am a resource to that extent.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Kevin?
I just have a comment. And it's good that this came up because I think it's always good for us just to, hold each other accountable in terms of transparency. We had one issue and it's got resolved, and that's great. But I think we always have to just remind ourselves, we have a loyalty to our office and to this town, of just, we have to be transparent in everything that we do, whether it's on social media or our dealings, our business dealings or whatever. We have to be held to a higher standard. We just do.
And I think it's good to have these conversations. This is just one topic that is about the larger topic of governance. And maybe we should schedule from time to time on a quarterly basis, having a governance conversation, inviting the city attorney to give a small presentation, and all of us have the opportunity to ask him questions about that topic.
Open meetings and FOIA issues and things like that.
Exactly.
Kevin, in your memo, you had mentioned seeking an opinion from the Attorney General's office, which would be the one that ultimately kind of does these things. And from my understanding of the memo was, even if we've resolved this, it's not about it, would we still ask for opinions on certain circumstances because there's no case law? Is that kind of how I read your memo?
Yeah, yes and no. I think if there's no pending issue, they're probably not going to issue an opinion. Right. They don't issue many opinions to begin with. And they might not even issue one if we had a pending issue. And I did suggest that perhaps we could couch it as a decision pending their advisory opinion that might then, perhaps spur them on to make, to do an opinion. But I'm not sure how likely that really is.
And that's kind of where I was going with it, is if we don't have anything anymore, there's really no need to seek anything out.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next up is a discussion on staff memos.
So I guess I'm facilitating this one. I would actually rather have the table take a shot at it. We get memos, we do a lot of reading, and staff puts a lot of time into the memos that they give us. We should probably make sure that the memos we're receiving are as strong as they can be. And in looking at them, maybe we have placed parameters on what it is that they give us that aren't necessarily useful. So, for example, I know there was a couple of meetings ago, someone said, well, there were no pros to this issue. Maybe there were no cons to this issue. Maybe the construct of the memo is not how it should be. So I guess I would throw it around to the table. If anyone has any suggestions on how we could make the memo process better, it's to help us, help staff help us. So.
I think actually it was Joe was the one that kind of brought it up, so I'll lead it over to you.
Take it.
Thank you. One of the first things I noticed when I was reading through one of the first staff memos, and it absolutely had to do with pros and cons on a position on an issue that came before us. The pros listed things like, if we do this, here's all the great things that are going to happen because we've done it. The cons were listed as, here's all the great things that aren't going to happen if we don't do it. And what I'd like to see is the pros are the great things that are going to happen if we do it, and the cons are the bad things that are going to happen if we do it, because those are the conflicts that we have to come in and resolve and weigh out which is better, the pros or the cons. They can't just be the opposite of each other. And that was the question, my first question about the staff memos.
If I may, I would actually add a little bit onto that, but maybe word it a little differently. I actually don't know if I want to see pros and cons at all. Maybe just simple, here's economic impact. Like take the notion of this being a pro out of it. Take the notion of this being a con out of it, because a pro to one may not be a pro to others. From my standpoint, like I would love to see the memos with these things become perhaps even more neutral and completely removed of any staff, almost recommendations. I mean, sometimes that may not be, but I think less of the staff recommendations, less of the this is the pro, yay, and there's only one con. To me, that feels sometimes like the memo is maybe steering us in a direction, whereas it really falls on us to decide as a group what the direction ought to be.
Working on that though, how do we ask professional staff to give us an opinion on something?
Yeah.
However, but to your point, not steer us in a particular direction. They might be saying, okay, so what if we change it from pro and con to the understanding of pro, meaning this is what happens if you pass this thing. And the other side meaning if you turn this thing down, these are the consequences of it. The funding issue is super important because we always talk about unfunded mandates. We might have this great idea that's going to cost us a couple $1 million a year to implement, and I want to know that.
Right.
So, Dan, you raise an excellent point because what Joe is saying is that when you look at pros and cons, there are pros and cons to doing it, and there are pros and cons to not doing it, and sometimes those are exactly the opposite thing. So it's almost like staff has to do it 4 times. And I will say from the perspective of staff that they find the pros and cons to be sort of a contrived sort of thing, so when you're saying, if I say that this is the pro of doing it, the opposite of that is the con of not doing it. Yeah, it's almost like wasted writing. And so the purpose of the memo from staff's perspective is that as city council, you are looking for them to present you with all of the technical information that you should take into consideration when you are making the decision whether to go in one direction or another. I think that staff has the ability to write what the consequences of taking one course of action versus not taking that course of action are. And then in the result, I think that staff's understanding is that they should express an opinion based on the fact that they have the technical expertise. But by expressing that opinion, they are in no way suggesting that that's the way that you might decide things, because you may take into consideration other factors that have not been presented in that.
I would agree with that, and someone's pro can be someone else's con.
Right.
On top of that, what about instead of saying pros and cons, we say impact of action, impact of no action?
Yeah.
That works too.
That's a stronger memo.
Yeah.
A presentation of what the facts are, a professional recommendation on how to proceed, the cost implications of our decision or indecision, and then the impacts of action or inaction. Is that stronger? Would staff say that is a stronger
Yes.
and less time to create?
And it's not so much less time to create,
I just don't want to put undue
sometimes felt awkward. Those pros and cons sometimes felt awkward in that memo, and I think that's what Joe was recognizing.
Yeah, it read awkwardly.
Right.
And it was like,
Let's go with this, and I mean, certainly, I want to hear everybody's comments on it, but that does sound better.
Yeah, I think you touched on what my suggestion was, or my idea was, at the end of the memo, there's always a line that says, staff recommends passing this. I'd like to, and I think what we're getting at is I'd like to see something that says, staff recommendation is to pass this or not pass it, and here's why. As why they believe, what's the justification for that recommendation. And I think kind of the things, the impact of no action, whatever, is with a little elaboration on here's why we believe what we believe.
Yeah.
Do we need a memo for everything?
So here's the thing. Do we need a memo for everything?
Let's say we authorize.
Short answer, yes. Do some memos need to be 2 sentences long and others need to be several pages? Yes. But I really do think that each request for action on your part
needs to be
be accompanied by why we're doing this. It's really creating a record for those in the future. I have found the memos that have occurred a long time in the past to be very useful to me in getting inside the heads of why a decision was made back then, and maybe things are different now. And all of that doesn't necessarily end up in the resolution or the ordinance.
It's kind of like showing your work. Yeah.
Right. But the point that I was going with that is if it's a piece of equipment that we authorized at budget time that we already gave the blessing for, we don't need to get into all of the detailed specs and all of that anymore.
No.
Those are the ones that I think would save staff time and not having to write those. We already, at budget time, knew what was being asked, and those are the things that we could just say, in the budget that was passed, here is the item that we are now buying under this budget here. I don't think they have to spend all the time justifying as part of the memo. Do the memo is just, this is part of the budget, this is a budget item, that's it, because the justification period for that has already been made when we pass the budget.
I was just get Gary's hand shot up.
That was basically the point I was going to make, is that the construct of the memos has been a challenge for staff since the original pro and con idea was thrown out 6 years ago. Because, debating whether we should have a particular type of business use in the downtown is certainly a community value decision. Whether we should buy the backhoe that's in the budget or not kind of has a total different feel to it. So we always, and you'll know my memos, if you go back and read my memos, I don't need pros and cons. The vast majority of my memos are, should we have a resurfacing program, or can we award to this person? That's probably how I'll continue to do my memos, and they're very straightforward, more black and white. Whereas community development talks about, if we change the zoning here could be the implications. And that's much more kind of community stuff that probably deserves much more explanation in the context you guys are talking about.
For sure.
I would just amend that briefly with if we're purchasing a backhoe, I really enjoy seeing the fact that we budgeted $170,000 and we spent $12 on it.
I agree.
And we can say congratulations and that's fantastic, and then you can say wait till we do a budget amendment for something else.
We still need a full memo to say we went to company A, B, and C.
Right.
Got these quotes. This
We
was the
have to
budget
vote on it.
amount, and then all that information still needs to be there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because I know if, we had one last night for the Batavia fireworks, approval of the fireworks, the memo from Chief Dyke. I think it was one sentence. And that gets back to your point, they can be short and
Good enough.
sweet where it's very cut and dry. It's just boom. Another question I had on things to add to impacts would be environmental impact. We're always talking after the fact about what things we've done or things we're about to do have an environmental impact, and asking staff to go back and look at it again, or taking more time to go look at it again, or delaying something, if that's something that's reasonable to request.
Sure, where
in a
it's
memo,
relevant, of
when it's
course.
relevant.
Of
Oh,
course.
it's always relevant. We should just use that.
And I think that that's something too, as we move forward in purchases for vehicles, I think that that's going to be an important aspect of it too, because I think there are a lot of things we can change within our own usage here of resources that we have.
Yeah, many of our small fleet vehicles we can certainly look at. We're not going to change a heavy truck, but certainly the next pickup truck we buy,
Not yet.
like we've been buying liquid natural gas preparation. So, you know, you're right, those are the things.
But one of the things that does come up is idling, and where we do not have to idle a vehicle, we do not. Although sometimes we get contacted by residents who say, you know, I was there and the police car was just sitting there and it was on, can't they turn it off? And, you know, there's a public safety reason why the answer to that question is no. Or I think one time it was, Gary, the bucket truck, right? And it turns out that the bucket, it cannot be operated unless the ignition is turned on. So those are good things, but it's also good for residents to know that we're thinking about those things and that we're cognizant.
Truck has to be in park too.
That's very
Note
true.
to self.
We always make sure of that.
I
We
think
always make
we've
sure.
come to a good solution, but I definitely add my 2 cents and advocate strongly. I do like the professional staff recommendation.
Yes.
I would want that to continue. And I don't know if it can be just a normal line item, but on everything, the budget impact is,
Oh, of course.
like Scott said,
Yeah.
I like knowing, you know, oftentimes it's in there, but oftentimes it's not. I'm like, is this under budget, over budget? And I don't know, and that would be great to know.
Or was it budgeted?
That too.
Then I don't want to know.
Identify that it is in the budget.
Yeah.
Of course, of course.
Otherwise, it's a budget amendment. So yeah, I understand. Is that enough direction?
Yeah, really.
And then
That's a lot of really good information, and I think that, I hope that you will find the changes as useful as we find them refreshing. Really.
Well, I think it's good to go through some of our own internal processes. I mean, we're trying to do this with some of the stuff we do with the public, but
Right.
it's also, I think, important that we look at the stuff we do. It's been 6 years since we really implemented this. And, you know,
Right.
something that we should look at, I think, more often than 6 years.
We haven't had a code subcommittee for 6 years, if you'd like to start those again. Okay, that's right.
You get to handle
Let's see, what is the next item on
really
the
good at
agenda there?
Oh, so that said,
Yeah, no,
in identifying a
true.
process like this, if staff has any other processes that we're doing things just because we've always been doing them that way, if there's other things, by all means, bring them to us, and we should
Thank
probably
you.
revisit this in 3 months, 6 months.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say.
what we
Let's
think.
put it
Yeah.
on the calendar to.
Sounds good.
6 months and see how things pan out with changes.
We're going to eliminate pros and cons then? I think
We're going to
there's
recast
probably-
it. Recast it as, yeah,
Impact.
impact. Much stronger. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up is discussion on non-residential refuse collection times. Such a fun topic.
So we have received complaints from people who live adjacent to our industrial areas, and they have reported that garbage collection at those industrial properties occurs before 7:00 a.m., which they find to be interfering with their sleep. So they want us to consider changing the times that refuse collection is allowed in the industrial areas.
I heard it was 4 a.m.
4 a.m.
Dumpsters dropping on the concrete.
A question I have, is it all, I don't know if it's a stupid question, but these companies that use it, do they all use advanced?
No. In the industrial area, they are free to contract with whomever they would like to contract with. It is only our residential that are serviced by Advanced.
Do we have any list of who it is there that's coming in?
We wouldn't.
Yeah, I guess we wouldn't. Do we know if Advanced does much of it?
My impression of it is that it is a mixture of different companies, but that I don't think that Advanced has the majority of the business by any means.
Is there any way we can control that and let Advanced get that contract and maybe lower the cost for the businesses? And if they're using the
Gary's waving his arms wildly.
Contracting for private companies.
No.
I mean, but I'm not. This company has 3 pickups a week. This company has 2 pickups a week. They need theirs at 8 in the morning. This one needs theirs at 10 in the morning. If it all goes under our umbrella, all the phone calls are going to come to us.
Yeah.
Joe didn't show up here today. That's not a road I would recommend going down.
Yeah. We can set parameters for what will allow areas, and that's really what we could do or try to enforce. What Gary's saying, I think, would be a nightmare for our staff to have to deal with.
we tell people then they have to use LNG gas?
Actually, under the state of Illinois, nowadays you can get your
Deregulated.
If you want to. Yeah, it's unregulated. But from a free market standpoint, right now we just let anyone market with anyone they want to on the waste collection.
So all we can control then is time, if that.
Time, dumpster locations, the cleanliness of the dumpster location through property maintenance.
I just did a quick drive through some of the industrial areas, and they are all different. I mean, the dumpsters that are at businesses are from 7 different
Flood
companies
Brothers,
I saw.
yeah.
So there's a lot of different ones, and I think one of the issues we have is there are some commercial areas that are maybe not the industrial areas that also have early pickup.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's one of the issues, because those are spread throughout Batavia Avenue, Wilson Street, east and west, Route 25. There's a lot of different places, and that noise carries a lot. So I don't know how we handle it, because a lot of those, they want the dumpster in and out and picked up when they don't have any employees there.
Right.
True, and in the downtown area, they're trying to avoid times when traffic is heavy as well.
Well, turning in and out and backing up to get in and out to a lot of the alleys and a lot of places they have to pick dumpsters up from is not an easy thing to do. And if there's any traffic out there at all, it makes it impossible.
Right.
River Street is not an easy place to go in and get traffic, to get the dumpsters in and out of. So I don't know that we can really change this and make a big difference in it.
Well, and if I can, that's a bit of where I was going was, would we know, or would we have some way of knowing if any of these companies have such an early pickup time? Because that's economically the way that their refuse pickup can work for them. That they've actually got a contract in place calling for that time, because right now there is no restriction on that time. Like, are we going to create a bigger problem here where all of a sudden now they have to renegotiate contracts, and that becomes something that just doesn't work for their business?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that, unfortunately, I guess it's, Wednesday morning, you just make sure you don't have your windows open, because that's when it's going to be picked up, or Thursday morning, or whatever the day happens to be. Unfortunately, people don't want to hear that, but that's the reality, I think, of the way a lot of these commercial and industrial areas are set up.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Let's move on.
Blame me, I mean, I don't know, have we had 10 complaints, 100 complaints, 3 complaints?
I have had several, and they seem to come predominantly from a couple areas. Probably the most repeated one is Redant Road, north of Wilson Street, backing up to houses in the 4th Ward. And that's where we get the most. And it's specifically businesses on the well, probably both sides of Verdant Road, but specifically the west side gets, and they've got long driveways and their dumpsters are out in the back and and they back up right to the houses. They're up there west of or east of New Louise White School. And then the other spot that we get is in the 6th Ward down around the old American Can Factory there on Bond Drive and some of that area. There's some people in there that, between the old American Can plant and there's that series of smaller industries there along Bond Drive. They seem to have a lot of activity, sometimes early in the morning, and some of the folks that back up to that are not residents of the city, but they still do call to complain about the noise and whatever. So those are the two areas that are the most common coming at us from opposition.
A good old-fashioned telephone call works. Menards used to make a lot of noise. I got a lot of complaints. That was one of the very first complaints I received in my email. I made a telephone call, something changed.
I
don't get any more complaints anymore.
Is it as simple as maybe asking these businesses if they can change the time, if that works for them?
Yeah.
And they may say, yeah, in the interest of being good neighbors, sure, we'll make that work.
I would tell you, my experience, sometimes yes and sometimes no. And sometimes the businesses get angered at the residents and vice versa, and then it becomes kind of an interpersonal feud that's going on. And I've been involved in a couple of those where one of the businesses called the Batavia Police and requested that they go over to talk to a resident next where they backed up to and tell them that they didn't want to be harassed by these people anymore for their noise complaint. And of course, I don't know where that one goes, because the police basically come to Laura and I and say, well, we got caught in the middle in this one. It's the business now calling up, complaining about the resident as overreacting. So, I mean, there's no solid answer to any of this.
Right, and I know that the safety issue with the trucks backing up with the ringers back them, they're not going to change that, because if they change that and they hit somebody, it's their company.
That's right. That's safety.
So that's truly a safety issue.
And you do get complaints, the businesses complain about residents dumping into their garbage cans.
Oh, yes.
That's legit.
A lot.
Why dumping?
Yeah.
Any
Now
other
that's a violation there. That's theft. It happens quite a bit.
Do we want to
It does.
direct staff to contact or try to figure out how we could contact some of the businesses in those locations to ask them if there's anything they can do differently with the carriers that they have, with the
On a complaint-by-complaint basis. If
Yes,
we start getting complaints, then
On a go-forward
Contact.
basis, maybe?
Can I just ask on the, instead of creating a whole new thing, how does it affect with the noise ordinance?
Gary?
Yeah, we
Discuss
actually,
that.
it's ironic we just had that discussion.
Yeah.
today. According to what Chief Ewell said at our staff meeting today, is our noise ordinance is geared towards industrial, meaning things like generators.
Right.
Not things like somebody turns up their stereo in a residential subdivision, or in this case, a garbage collection. We had the discussion regarding noise related to fireworks. But that's our only ordinance, is industrial noise for things like machinery.
I know we had one complaint one time, not even in my ward, but it was the school district was running their
The buses
generator.
or the generator?
test generator, testing it
Yeah.
once a week at like 3 o'clock in the morning, right across the street from 3 or 4 houses.
I think we've also had loud air conditioning equipment at one of the schools too, that early on in my tenure that we had to.
And all they had to do was just reprogram it, and it tests now at 10 a.m. on the next day or something, so nobody knows that it's happening. All right, we're done with that. Now we'll move on to project status.
Okay, I just have a few things. One, I want to first thank residents who cooperated with us and were very helpful in removing debris from the storm drains. That helped a lot during these heavy rains to make sure that we could get the water collected where it's supposed to be. But now here's another topic that's come up, and that's grass clippings. And I don't think that there are many occasions of people purposely, wanting to put their grass clippings in the street. But here's what happens. You're mowing down near the street, and you don't have a mulching mower, you don't have a bag on, and that part of your grass clippings goes in the street. And it probably from 1 yard doesn't look like a lot of grass clippings. But when you think about the fact that we have about, 9,000 homes in this community, 9,000 times that amount of grass clippings is a lot of grass clippings. And grass clippings are really dangerous for our stormwater system that goes to our wastewater treatment plant because many of us fertilize our lawns. And here we've just made a massive improvement to our wastewater treatment plant, $65 million project. We're trying to keep the phosphorus out of the Fox River. One of the ways we can do that is by making sure those grass clippings don't get down into our storm drains. So how can you do that? Well, it's a matter of when you're at that point, if you could just always mow if you're going to have them discharged from the mower, just always point them back up toward your yard. One of the things we do in our city contracts, all of our contractors are instructed that if they are mowing and they get grass clippings in the street, they need to blow those back up onto the property that they just mowed. So that's another method that residents can use. And of course, the best thing is put those nutrients right back in your lawn, use a mulching mower. It's the same thing we suggest with all of those leaves that you pick up from your yard. They make great mulch. So please, anybody, I recommend it. I've started doing that with, I've got trees all over my property, and I also have very nice tomato plants this year. So encourage everybody to mulch where they can. We're going to be doing a public campaign about that as well to try to encourage people to do that.
Laura?
Yes.
More on the subject of grass, all along Main Street, the parts that are unincorporated and incorporated, that whole stretch from Van Ortwick West to the high school. I don't know who we have to talk to find out about what has to be done to mow that, because some of it's almost 3 feet tall.
Being done.
Okay.
It's being done. Conversations are being had.
I wanted to bring it up because I noticed again today
Absolutely.
that there's only one spot in the middle of it that got done, none of the rest of it.
We had some problems there because some of that's not ours yet.
Right. Right. The unincorporated areas we don't have control over, but those that where development is happening right now, we do. And we're on it. The second thing I wanted to bring up is years ago we had done a program with BATV that was called Municipal Minute. And we are going to be re-implementing the Municipal Minute. And we're going to start with doing it on a monthly basis. And what we want to do is highlight a specific project that the city is engaged in, take them out to the site, show them the work that's happening, tell them why we're doing it, how much it costs, how long it'll take, and what benefits the city is going to see as a result of those projects. So we're looking forward to doing that in the future, so look for those. And also, engineering staff met with Illinois Department of Transportation about the Prairie Street reconstruction project, and it was because IDOT is finishing review of the phase 1 of the project. The purpose of this meeting was to talk about beginning the phase 2 engineering for that project. And then the last thing that I'd like to talk about is a very serious matter, and that is what happened in Virginia Beach last week. Not only does that have our city employees very concerned about employee safety in the workplace, it was the same reaction. All of you were here for the training that the police department had put on about active shooter training should something occur here at City Hall. And there was quite a poignant and pretty emotional video that was part of that training. Our city employees, after they saw that video, had a very visceral reaction to it and asked, what more can we do to make sure that our building is as safe as it can be? And a lot of the ways that we can do that were elements of the remodeling project that had previously been put on hold. And so what I would like to ask is if we could put that on an upcoming city council agenda to maybe, and internally, we're going to have a meeting to say, in light of things that have occurred, what lessons can be learned and how could we maybe augment what that project was in order to incorporate greater elements of security for us all while we're performing our work inside this building. So with your approval and assent, I'll go ahead and put that on a future agenda for discussion. Dan?
Did that include everything from HVAC to carpets and key cards and
computer
bulletproof
wires
all that kind of stuff?
Yes. It did not incorporate a remodel of the dais, but I think that it should. At this point, maybe we could roll that into the same project.
I thought, maybe I'm mistaken, but, this has come up in the past.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't anything new to our society. And I know Dan Chanzit, Alderman Chanzit, has been quite vocal about it, enough with the prayers and the thoughts, and we don't want those anymore. So I know we discussed maybe a joint letter coming from the city of Batavia, going to our state representatives, to the governor, to someone, because I'm wholeheartedly behind, protecting our staff, but, the whole community in general really does need to be protected also. Mm-hmm. And there's no way to do that, but except maybe, stronger, more background checks. I'm not looking to take anyone's weapons, but background checks, putting more emphasis in mental illness, onto mental illness, that it's people would rather have cancer than say they had a mental problem, an illness which might be just cured by drugs or something. It's like a broken arm. I mean, it's not a bad thing. So we should try to do our best and get to our representatives to lift that stigma. But anyway, I mean, it's tragic what you brought up that happened in Virginia Beach. It's terribly tragic. And I'm, for one, I don't know, I can't speak for anyone else, I'm sick and tired of it. And we really do need to do something because these are lives that are being lost. And so that's my pitch on that. And I'm going to keep speaking out now because it's sickening that it continues to go on and that the NRA keeps funding guns. And it's incomprehensible to me that they just do not care about the human element. It's not defense anymore. It's just not defense. And so I just wanted to put that out there since you brought it up. I had no intention of bringing anything up, but since you did, thank you.
Anybody else have any? I definitely think we should have it on the agenda, whenever you have whatever you want to bring forward to us ready.
Thank you.
Get it here and we'll discuss it.
Okay.
Figure out how to fund it.
Will do. Thank you.
Okay. Next up is number 10, others. Elliot?
So we've had this problem in the past. We did something about it. They came in and talked with staff and we let them start work again. I think MetroNet needs a bit of a reminder about the quality of work that they're doing in neighborhoods.
We have a meeting on Monday.
Wonderful. Because I can tell you that for over a week, almost 2 weeks, there's been a 2-foot pile high of dirt sitting at a corner, not in the easement, on the property side. I can tell you that as I drove through down Bradford Lane, actually, they left cables overnight just laying out on the yards. Exposed wire on these cables. I'm sure it was not active, but nonetheless, how is someone to know the difference? And then lo and behold, today I got home and found that in their boring, they nicked the gas line. And so one of the streets got shut down, the fire department was over. Just again, maybe an accident, but seems to be an awful lot of carelessness going on with their work. I know I've taken numerous phone calls from concerned neighbors, some that have sprinkler systems that are pretty sure there's going to be damage to those. Fear, but nonetheless. Got one call from a gentleman who was in Iowa at the time because his wife was beside herself. Some of the gardens that were in the front yard, again, not in the easement, but on the property side, were completely torn up and trampled. So I think they need a reminder. Strongly worded reminder.
With regard to the garden that was torn up, that's not in the easement, after the meeting, could you provide me with an address for that so I can follow up with the resident? Thank you.
Yeah, I had 3 calls today from residents, mostly on the east side, of things that they were aghast that MetroNet had done to them. I said, report and give us better detail, and we'll talk about having them come in and pay for repairing it or getting it right with the folks. But I agree. I mean, they have not been any. I would be hard pressed to give them a recommendation.
Thank you.
I have another also. Alderman Chanzit, again, brought up when we were taking the walks with the mayor throughout town a couple of years ago.
The alley?
It was Newsboy Alley. We voted on that.
Did Alderman Brown call you?
We voted on that.
Yeah.
And to install it, and it was approved.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, to install what?
The gate at Newsboy Alley. And it has not been done. The arches, right.
It's funny you say that. On his last meeting, he said, make sure you get that thing done.
So,
thank you.
I mean, we have the foundations in for it, and so it's just one of the finishing touches for the streetscape. And I'd like to see that happen.
Thank you.
It's something that we have all the artwork. Laura, it's before Laura's time. We have all the artwork, we have all the design. It never went forward, so if it's taken action to actually approve it.
We did.
It's not in a budget.
Right.
You have to do a budget amendment and go forward.
You should probably see it in the 2020 budget then, because we did vote.
Yeah, we did vote on it. It was approved.
And I am working on the windmill at the gas station on
It's
Kirk
in my
Road.
head that we had some issue with the overhang of the sign, that some trucks were going to have a hard time getting underneath that or something, wasn't it? Wasn't the arch going?
Garbage truck goes in there.
That's the issue.
That's electric at the end of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's our own truck that's the issue, and I thought the design then incorporated that.
I thought so too.
Yeah.
I
But
know
you're right.
we had a problem with how high that was going to be. That was the only thing I remember.
Yeah, I thought that was resolved though. That issue was resolved.
Truck and our line truck down that alley.
Well,
I'll check into it.
I'm going to say all of it's probably in the archives of meeting minutes. So we can
Thank you.
find it.
Yeah, you can find
For
it.
the reminder.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Alan?
Mike.
Yeah. 3 weeks ago, I brought up some concern on the intersection of Oswalt and Bellevue. And I want to say, I think within 8 days, we went from having no directional sign to a stop sign. And it's greatly appreciated that that was taken care of so quickly. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. There's nothing else from anybody? Scott?
Movie adjourn.
Second.
We're going to vote on
Is that
that?
an aye or?
All those in favor?
Gavel, gavel,
Gavel, gavel.
gavel.
We're going to leave it hang.
There you go.